Let's be honest, every garden requires some form of maintenance, whether it's our flower beds, our evergreen shrubs, or even our containers. They do require maintenance. And clearly, this area of my garden I've let go for a long while. So join me today as I upgrade this area with some new ideas that will allow me to spend less time worrying about it and more time enjoying.
So one of the first things that I want to talk about with this flower bed is, first of all, the fact that it's in either sun or shade, depending on what time of year it is. And if it's in the summertime, when the sun is more directly overhead, it gets plenty of sun on this side, which is why this bed has been always problematic, in that I'll plant something that is more apt to grow in the shade, and then the summer hits and then they fry, like things like impatiens down here in front, because it really is not protected when the sun is straight up ahead. And in the heat of the summer, man, it can't get away from that heat, and it's just the end of those plants for sure. And then the other problem is in the fall or in the winter time, it's all shade on this side. So we've always had a hard time figuring out what to plant on this side. I plant something and it ends up doing fine for a little while, but as soon as that sun changes, then it ends up being pulled or dying. So a couple of years ago, I found the Surefire rose begonias and I planted them in here, and they did beautifully. Finally, something that would grow in both sun and shade and had no problem during that transition between seasons. So I feel like because they did so well and they looked so great for 2 years, they fizzled out here recently and they needed to be replaced. But after all, they pretty much are an annual, and the fact that we got 2 years out of them, even though it is here in Southern California and we don't have those harsh winters, the fact that we got 2 years out of them is amazing. So what I'm going to do to keep things cohesive with the front planter that I planted a couple weeks ago with the Super Beanut Whiteout and the Super Tunia Snowdrift, those are all white. I'm going to plant white Surefire begonias here. These are brand new for this year, and I think these are going to do great, and it will kind of keep that line all the way across the whole front planter. And I know that seems kind of weird to plant all white, but I think it's going to be a nice statement this year. I usually don't do that. I usually got color going all over the place, so the fact that it's going to be all white, all matching all the way across, I think it's going to be really cool to see how that looks throughout the season. So I've already got these boxwoods trimmed, and I'm going to condition the soil just a little bit. What I mean by that is I'm going to add some raised bed soil from Miracle Grow. And what that ends up doing is, because this ground has been in the past so hard, it becomes a little bit more lofty. I notice that there's more earthworms in the ground as well. And since it is made with organic material for the most part, well, I think it is actually totally organic, it really is good for the soil, and it does wonders for the plants that are in here. So it'll act as a conditioner for the soil that's already here, because I know when they built these beds, even though they were here before we moved in, they just filled them with regular dirt from the ground. Plus, when we get rain over the summer or even throughout time, it does settle and lower. So by adding a little bit, it's not so compacted. Let's get these things in the ground. I'm going to get my auger out. We're going to use some of this organic starter fertilizer Biotone, in each of their root balls. And then after a while, I'm going to run the drip to each one of the root balls just like I did in the front planter. And I think this bed is going to have all that it needs to make it through the season. Another really cool thing about these Surefire begonias is they don't require a lot of maintenance at all. You don't have to deadhead them. You barely have to fertilize them. I put a little bit in at the beginning of the season, and then maybe halfway through the season, I'll put a little bit more of the plant tone around the root balls. But other than that, that's it. They don't really suffer from any kind of bug damage or anything like that. I don't have to spray them like I do my Supertunias and my Super Bells. So you just kind of let them go and enjoy the show. Anyways, let's get these things planted, and I hope this thing turns out as well as I think it's going to. So here we go. All right. So the new soil is down. The new raised bed soil is down. I don't know about you guys, but this is a huge improvement. You know, I haven't always bought into the mulching idea, but the more and more I see online and the more I do this, the more I absolutely love it. And I'm excited because hopefully this will not only condition the soil that's already here, but it will also suppress the weeds, and it will also give them the nutrients that they need. While I was doing this, in my mind, I'm thinking, I was going to plant some of these Surefire white begonias in the container up there. But I think I'm going to keep that container for my white impatiens because that area up there is much more shaded, and they'll do better in there than they would if I tried to put them in the ground like I said before. So I think I'm going to keep those for the container and use the Surefire down here in the flower bed. So let me get these things planted, and it's going to look great. Also, you might think I did it backwards because a lot of people mulch after they plant, but since I was putting so much in and it was raising the level of soil in here, I wanted to make sure that I didn't plant them and then put the soil in and then have them bury the root balls and choke out the plants. So I wanted to get the level up the way it should be first, then I'll go ahead and plant, and that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to get these things spaced like I want them, use the auger, and get them in the ground quickly. All right, there we go. Okay, so I have one left, and since I do have one left, I'm going to take that opportunity to plant up this container with just one of these so I can bring some of the flower power that's down here in the flower bed up on the porch to kind of create that balance and take some of the idea that I have here in the flower bed onto the porch, which I think that'll be really, really nice. So let's go ahead and get this thing planted. So it's the next day. We ran out of daylight yesterday, but I wanted to continue the video to show you the end product and also talk about how I ran the drip line. And down here in front, you can see those beautiful Surefire white begonias look really great in their spot, especially with that raised bed soil used to cover the soil that I had there as a mulch and also to condition the soil. I think it looks great. They're going to do really nicely here if they're anything like the other ones that we had last year. And then we have this beautiful pure white impatient up here in the pot. It gets dappled sun at this time of day, but here in a couple minutes when it gets in the shade of the trees that are on the street, it's going to be in shade once more. But I think it's going to do great up here, and it goes along with our white theme. What I did like I did with all of the other containers that I've been planting this year, is I ran the drip line through the bottom after I had raised the pot up on the pedestal feet here, and that's allowed me to hold that drip line secure in place in the middle of the pot. And then I came along with some of this rain drip line that has emitters every 12 inches, and I circled that on the top of the soil. This way, when the drip irrigation turns on, it gets plenty of moisture at the top, and then it'll hopefully hit all of the root balls of these little plants that I planted in here. I had one of those extra Surefire white begonias, so I put it in this tin pot that I have here, and I just ran a drip line on the side of it because I don't know if I'm going to have this one in this spot for the whole time when I'm growing these things out here. If I want to move that, that'll give me the flexibility to move it. But for the things that I know that are going to be permanent and I'm not going to move, I run the drip line through the bottom so that it's tucked away nicely. And this one from the front, you can't see it very much. It's running up the back, so it does hide it there. But pretty much that's basically it. So that's how I ran the drip to the containers. But let me tell you really quick how I ran the drip to my plants that are in the planter. And this is what I did in the front planter where I have the Superbena and Supertunia there. And this is also what I did here, because although this is great because it's every 12 inches, I find that this works better when you're in a container. But if you're in a different situation like the planter and you want to spread your annuals out further than 12 inches or less than 12 inches, it's always great to have the flexibility to run drip to each root ball in the place where you've planted them. So what has allowed me to do that is these little inline irrigation emitters from Rainbird. And basically what that is a little emitter that has a little hole right in the middle of the disc, and I'll show you a close-up. And when you're coming along with your line, you place this in one side, and then you continue your line on the other side. And then once you continue on this side, if you want, you would put another one where that plant is located. So basically what you're doing is you're putting an emitter within the straight line of the hose here at every root ball, so you can make sure that they get their moisture that they need. So anyways, I find that it's been very effective, and it's worked really well for all of my plants that are in the planter and in the ground. So anyways, as for care for these things, like I said before, the Surefire white begonias aren't going to need much care. I don't have to deadhead them or really take care of them at all. They don't require a lot of fertilizer. I already put the Biotone starter fertilizer down there, so that's going to last them a while. If in the middle of the season I notice that they need a little help, I might come around their root ball where the emitter is located and put a little bit more of the plant tone or flower tone. But that's basically it. I don't need to come by with any kind of water soluble for those. Now, as for the impatiens, I've learned a valuable lesson. I had always thought that they, I don't know why, were needing water soluble every so often to keep them blooming, but I noticed the more I fed them, the worse off they did. If I just left them alone and used a little bit of slow release fertilizer here and there throughout the season, they did much better. As soon as I started using a lot of water soluble fertilizer for my impatiens, I noticed that I got spider mites big time, and I don't know why that is, but in my case, it happens every time. So as soon as I toned down on the fertilizer that I give these things, I ended up way more successful. And so I'm going to keep with that regimen this year. So there's a lot of low maintenance things that I added to the garden, and I hope that it does really well. We'll give you updates as we go through the season so you can see how these things are growing. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. We're so glad that you were with us today, and this is just one thing to check off the list, and I hope that because they are so low maintenance, I'll just be able to enjoy them without fussing over anything throughout the season. So we'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye everybody.